Hey there everybody, thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I will be taking a look at the last volume of Balak, Saint-Leville, and Bastien Vivez's Lastman. This is out from Image through Robert Kirkman's Skybound. This had originally come out in the first 6 volumes of a 12-volume series from Ablaze, and they never finished it. Really loved it. Really glad that Kirkman got a hold of it and did it. This says book 6, but there's 2 volumes per book. So, but the 4, 5, and 6 of this are basically 6 through 12, 7 through 12 of the series that I never got to read. So the series has finally concluded. I don't remember if I've been going through the series that's been coming out. I don't think so. I'll have to do a reread of the series and do a video of the whole series all at once at some point, because it's so complex and it takes so many turns that by the time I got to the 6th one, having read it in pieces, I'm a little bit lost on some of the specific details, but that's not a fault of the authors. It's just a fault of how much I'm reading. So what I want to do is go through and give you a look at like the wild variety of genres that this book cycles through just in this one volume. I think that's the coolest thing about this book is in the first couple volumes, I had a really clear idea of what the book was. And then like it changes in the 2nd or 3rd volume and you're like, oh, okay, they pulled a trick on us, but now it's this kind of book. And then that just keeps happening so many times throughout the story that you really cycle through so many different genres as you go. But it's all fluid. It all makes sense. The collaboration between the 3 artists, all 3 of these, Balak, Saint-Leville, and Vivez, are all great artists in their own right, and they're all collaborating on this. I have no idea what the collaborative process is. Their styles mesh very well together, and like there's no, as we switch to genres, there's no discomfort with the styles, basically. So you can see starting out with kind of like more of a horror, like, vibe going on here, this almost demonic sacred ritual going on. All the books start like a manga with a little color sequence, and then they go to black and white. Some really nice action sequences here, and then we go into the black and white. And there's, within the story here, there's 2 different worlds. There's a more fantastical world. So in this one now, there's like a kind of zombie plague going on in the fantastical world, so you can see it switch over to like the zombie vibes, with the heavier spotting of blacks and everything versus the wispier line work here. And then there's this futuristic city, and there's a veil between the 2 worlds that's coming down. That's like the main conflict of the story, and characters from one side have gone over to the other, and now they're coming back the other way into the fantastical world. All the intricacies of the politics of that, like I said, I'm a little lost on all the interpersonal relationships of the characters because I've been reading this in chunks over the last year or so. But it all fits together very well. And like I said, the art jumps really well. You can see, like, when you look at the page, there's no visual distress about the fact that you're jumping from like a medieval zombie story to like a futuristic beach resort. And it works totally fine. There's also a lot of like really awesome powers-based martial arts going on in here. So here you can see one of the main characters, Adrian Velba, using his like wind power here, I believe, in this fight sequence. And you can go in this book from like a really awesome fight sequence like this because Michael Saint-Leville is such an amazing action artist, to these very quiet, very intimate scenes between characters. Like here you have a memory of Adrian and his mother, and this to me is very obviously a Bastien Vivez page because it's got that like softness that Bastien Vivez has in his work, that open airiness, that like a really approachable kind of character design. But then even when we come back to these big action sequences, there's still that openness to the art. There's still that line quality. Like that could just as well be a Bastien Vivez face as a Michael Saint-Leville. So it's really hard to tell who's doing what. But you can switch back and forth between that and then like this a super awesome sequence where you get this big monster coming and like the kids fighting him, and you have just as good of action art as you could get. And here's more like a superhero fighting dinosaurs type of vibe in this one. Again, you can see the really awesome like manga inspired mixed with European vibes action sequences in here. A lot of really nice foreshortening. And then back to that, just like very emotional, down to earth, soft stuff coming from Bastien Vives. And just flipping back and forth through all of those different things throughout the story really helps you become more invested. I remember watching Forrest Gump with my mom, and when we left the movie, she said, "Oh, I hated that movie. It couldn't figure out what genre it wanted to be." And even as a kid, I knew, I was like, Mom, but like that's how life is. Like life is, you're in a 4 years in Vietnam in a war movie, and then you come back and you're in a romance, and then you're in a comedy, and you're in a tragedy. And I feel like this book has that same quality, but in terms of like fictional genres where you can go through them all, and like people living in a world like this would have all of these awful wild encounters. Back to some of the color, you get to see again that just awesome, fantastical, explosive art that's in the action sequences. And then we get a real change in coloring too, where you get this really rich, like classical, almost Renaissance looking painting here. Then we have a sequence where one of the other main characters, Richard Aldana, who's like a MMA fighter. Like the book basically starts off as a magical like fighting book, a tournament fight. So this fighter character now, he's walking around like a badass with a shotgun blowing everything up in his fantasy zombie land, and that's super fun and awesome. You get this beautiful sequence here where he runs back into Adrian's mother, who he has a relationship with, and she winds up being like super super powerful. So you can see her here like really leveling up, some really pretty like lighting effects going on, I think, to make her look powerful without really going over the top. That's one of the things that really impresses me about Bastien Vives's work, and all of the work in here by the other artists as well, is they all have this same real like openness and delicate touch to their art, where they're not going to do a whole lot, but they can say a lot with the very little lines and little bit of value that they use. And then after everything comes down, we're in the epilogue, we're in the more like natural, familiar, real world to us. This sequence, I'm gonna guess is Bastien Vives drawing it, but this feels a little like a Michael Sanlaville. But the very first actually no, the first Bastien Vives book I ever bought was called Taste of Chlorine. And this is very much what Taste of Chlorine is. It's just a bunch of sequences of people swimming and a guy meeting a girl at a pool. I did a review on that, or at least look at Bastien Vives's work as a total on the channel, so check that out. But this reminds me a lot of Taste of Chlorine, so it's cool to see him wrapping some of those themes back in. Really lovely sequence. In Taste of Chlorine, it's colored, so it's even cooler. And then you get to see Adrian and his lover, now older with the baby. So you get a nice little like come down epilogue to everything. And this is very much Bastien Vives art written all over it. The lack of the eyes, the beautiful hair, the flowy, graceful people. So really, really excited to finally have the conclusion to this story. It was something I feared I would never get when Ablaze looked like they were going to quit publishing it. So thank you very much to Robert Kirkman and Skybound for getting this. Thank you also for them not bailing out when Bastien Vives had his stupid little kerfuffle with people complaining about his comics. Yeah, I love Bastien Vives. I wish there was more Michael Sanlaville stuff being translated, because I've fallen in love with his art. Balak, I think, is more the writer. I haven't seen as much of his art. But really, really love this series. I think it is like one of the great modern action series. Just the amount of genres it goes through so naturally, it never feels like you're being jerked in any one direction. And the constant series of turns and surprises, and oh, it's not this type of story, it's oh no, it's this, it's this, it's this. Just really masterfully handled, both in writing and then exquisite, beautiful, fun action art that also has all of those beautiful moments that Vives brings to things. So I'm definitely going to do a reread at some point, and if you haven't yet, go get yourself the whole set of these, because they're awesome comics.